Hey, everybody. We are back with another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. Thanks for being here, Kim, and whoever is listening. I am here today with Kim Hynes, who is a nutritional health coach, and she specializes in intuitive and mindful eating, but also helping women work through hormonal shifts and transitions in the second half of life. And yeah, we're going to be talking about all of that, but also Kim celebrated 2 years alcohol-free about 6 months ago. So you're like going on your third year alcohol-free as well. So we're going to talk about her sober curious journey too. Hey, Kim.
Hi, it's so nice to be here with you, Katie. Thanks for having me back.
I know. I'm excited to dig into what you do, but also, yeah, the evolution of your sober curious path and how that has been shaped and subsequently shaped your life and your health and wellness, your career. So, yeah, let's just dig on in to the first question, which is what inspired your sober curious journey and how did the seedlings of awareness start to awaken around alcohol consumption?
I was someone who drank on and off since I was 18. 18 was the drinking age. That's how old I am. It was 18 when I first started drinking, and then it actually went to 21 during that time. So, but we found states that we could close by that we could drive to. I grew up in Connecticut, and New York was still 18, and we were luckily not too far, so we went over the border. And it was funny because I didn't even see my parents drinking a ton, but when my parents started to get divorced when I was around 16, 17 years old, I noticed the alcohol around them even more. It was really something that I look back now and I realize, wow, I was seeing it more and more and more. And so it just became very normalized for me. But then, of course, college made it completely normalized, this drinking pattern. And when I got out of college, I found that it's interesting. I wasn't feeling like I was drinking when I look back, like I was drinking any more than anybody else, but I was doing really weird, risky things that I look back now on, like, you know, going out with the guys who are a lot bigger than me and trying to hold my own with the tequila shots or something just to show that I could,
Mhm.
and I'm like 5'4". I wasn't even that when I was younger. And then I would do other things too. Like back in the day, I did risky behavior with driving also.
Mhm.
And just things that were so out of my norm that alcohol took me out of. And as I got older, I had kids and I really wanted to have a really good way of showing them you can have alcohol without having too much. And we were very moderate at home. But I did find myself during very stressful times, it started to ramp up and it was really ramping up. Um, I got divorced and it I started to realize I was drinking wine on my own when my kids would go back and forth and they'd go to their dads. And, as someone who also coaches on emotional eating and stress eating, alcohol and food both became this thing that numbed me while my kids were away for that week. And at night, I would look forward to it. And then it just kind of kept going. I met Mike, my current husband, after many years of being a single mom. And I noticed that when I first went on a date with him, it was so refreshing. Everybody I'd gone out with, it was just like this drinking thing, meeting out, having drinks. He had one drink on our first blind date. And I was like, wow, like just watching the control and it wasn't really control, it's just who he is. But I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, and just drank water after that. So when we got married, it was pretty moderate at first, but again, then hormonal changes started kicking in. We were blending a family. And blending a family, for anyone who's done it, like trying to bring in 2 kids, 2 kids, and 2 exes, and trying to make that whole thing seem seamless, and me wanting to be super stepmom, be the perfect stepmom. I was still teaching. I hadn't gone back to school for the nutritional health coaching just yet, but I've been studying it on the side. And I did start while I was teaching, but I was teaching 100 kids, coming home to 4, and I started this is when I knew something was not okay. I was starting to beeline to the grocery store on the way home sometimes.
Mhm.
Like, I literally drove an hour to work every day, yet I would go that extra time to go to the grocery store, go in and pick out and I knew where my wine was. I knew exactly in the store where it was. So I
Mm.
would beeline to that little spot, come back out, and I would pray, like, I was like, "Gosh, I wish this store would get self-checkout so I wouldn't have to keep going through the line where somebody would see me."
Yeah.
And, which doesn't matter because they card you in self-checkout anyway. But it just was one of those things where I started to feel it. And the tipping point was I would take a month off here and there, but as soon as I tasted it again, as soon as I had it again, as soon as I had that sip that gave me that first letdown of the day, I was hooked again, and I got so tired of being a slave to something that I wasn't even myself on it. I ate more. I had conversations with my husband that were like, ew, ick now." When I look at, like, I'd be kinda naggy sometimes. Sometimes I was just fun, but, you couldn't always count on Fun Kim coming out with the
Mhm.
wine. So,
Mhm.
um so finally, in January of 2022, this is something I did on purpose, and I think this is gonna sound strange to people, especially if you're a dieter. I did not wanna start with everybody on January 1st. Things like that never work. They never work for me starting on a Monday, starting on January 1st, starting on the 1st of a month, and counting down and having all these
Yeah.
perfect months. I'm so sick of being perfect that I started on Tuesday, January 24th. That was my first sober
Yeah.
day, and
Yeah.
it was
You're like,
weird.
"Random?
Yeah, it's
The more random, the
random
better."
out there. So that was kind of my journey into it, but then when I started, I never had an end date, like, I'm done forever. Like, I never some people have that, and I'm so happy for them, but I just was taking it literally, a day at a time, then I'd get a week in, then I'd get a few weeks, and then it was a month, and then I started counting, months instead of weeks, and there was a turning point where we'll probably talk about the benefits, but there was a turning point where, and you and I talked about this today, it wasn't like I had to keep counting, but I wanted to get, it was on principle. At a
Mhm.
certain point, I was like, I'm getting to a year. And then that was it. It was done.
Mhm. Yeah, you get to a p it's funny because I think deep down I did know I was not gonna drink ever again, like, on a
Yes.
intuitive level, but it just felt easier and better to be like, "I'm just exploring this for now." And then you do get to a point of no return where you're like, "What's the point, though,
What's
to go
the
back
point?
now?" Like, I'm so much my life is drastically improved in so many ways that and you become so happy without it and, like, fulfilled without it
Yeah.
that especially with what you touched upon when you drink to self-medicate, when you actually deal with the issues that you drank to self-medicate and that need isn't there anymore, and you realize that, like, I kind of feel shitty with this and it's actually not bringing any value to my life other than numbing out pain that I've since dealt with, there's really no
Yes.
pull for it, you know? And so you said 2 things that stood out too, which I think would resonate with a lot of people. One is, seeing your parents start drinking more when they got divorced. So it's just this normalization of drinking for stress, which was then your pattern. And then you said perfectionism and trying to be perfect. And that's so huge because I think like we were saying before we started the call too, so much of stress is self-imposed and like perfectionism is self-imposed stress and just like the trap that we set up for ourselves when we're expecting to be a perfect version of ourselves to everyone in our lives, whatever that means, and how that is so detrimental for us in the long run because it does keep us looking for escapes and alcohol is such like a common easy one to fall into.
I think that is such an important point because perfectionism comes from a place somewhere in us where we never felt enough. We had to always achieve or get to a certain level or um, have it all done perfectly. And we're both business owners, so we know that that happens all the time also in business. It's not just something in life. We're always trying to make things perfect before we move forward. And somewhere along the line, I think a lot of people that I've worked with and myself, when you feel like you can't fail, you feel like you can't, everything has to be a certain way and it has to look a certain way on the outside. You have to look a certain way to everyone and you have this image, or maybe it's an identity you're holding up that you don't even need to hold up anymore. I think that's really important to look at because alcohol, when you're not drinking, you are you, like to the core. And like you said, that intuitive part of knowing you weren't going to go back, that's you talking. And
Mhm.
the alcohol is, it's somebody else.
Mhm. I know I always say, like, anybody can, dump a substance into their body that's gonna remove inhibitions and then feel confident or feel like they like themselves or feel like they're social or all these things. It's like it is actually really badass to be able
Mm.
to find that within yourself without it. It's like not it's doesn't take any skill to just strip yourself of giving a shit because you're numbing yourself out and then acting in a way that you think is you, but it's not you. It's
Right.
just and what's really you is being able to do that without any of it and curating and cultivating that kind of those aspects of yourself and getting curious about who you are without it and all of that. And so how over the past 2 years, 2 plus years now, like, how do you feel like your journey has evolved, from the beginning to now? What shifts have you experienced that maybe people who are in early sobriety are like, "What's it gonna be like as I carry forward?"
That is such a great question because it is evolving and it's really it's so enlightening to me because I remember probably about a year or two before I actually stopped drinking. I remember going to some kind of party and I was the designated driver. So I had two and I stopped and just drank water. And I
Mhm,
remember that there was some freedom to that, though. It was almost like chains were taken off of me that,
mhm.
oh, I'm the designated driver, so I don't have to drink. And that's what's happened. The chains keep coming off as I've been going into my journey because here's what I think is really hard. When you have a choice, it is hard. If you're like, "Do I drink or do I not drink? Do I drink? Do I not drink?" This is going back and forth, bobbling in your head, and it's really hard, and I find this with emotional eating too. When you make a decision that you're not going to drink, the decision is made. When people around you learn that you are not drinking, the decision is made. It's so easy. There's so much freedom. I show up at places now and people will have mocktails made for me, or they'll say, "Oh, by the way, they have soda if you want." Somebody at July 4th just said, "Hey, I've got lemonade and Coke in the fridge, or just water, whatever you want." They did. There was no pressure. The decision was made for me. But the other evolution that I've had, and I love you talk about this a lot, and I really feel it now is my gut instinct and my intuition is so much more um I am so much more in tune and listen to myself better because my body is a little bit more in tune and I can feel things more. When I was drinking and like the next day I'd have like this anxiety going on where I had this hangover of what I said, what I did, me saying I wasn't going to drink. I was actually meaner to myself. Even if nothing ever happened, I just had a glass or two of wine at home. I was really mean and was like, "You said you weren't gonna do that to yourself." And, really the evolution is now it's like I wake up and I'm like, I know how I feel. My gratitude is high. Even if things are rough, I can see like things a little bit more clearly. And we were just talking offline about the detachment. Like I'm not so attached to all these feelings and emotions. Now I can be. Don't get me wrong, that can happen, but I have a better sense of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that's only the non-physical stuff. The physical stuff is incredible. Like, I didn't lose a pound, by the way. I just want to be
Mhm.
real with people. Don't do this to lose weight but I will tell you, my skin got better, my gut got better, my workouts got better, I got stronger. So my body is recomping, without having to. I would get up. This is how insane this is. I would go out, have drinks, and get up at 4:30 in the morning and run 10 miles with my running group and wonder why, like, wow, maybe I'm just having a rough day. Maybe my running's off today. And I never made the connection that, hey, maybe if you don't drink alcohol the night before you go stress your body out, it might be okay.
Yeah, because 'cause you're
Yeah.
stressing your body out before you stress your body out.
Exactly.
I know, and it happens at
Mm.
surprisingly, like, low amounts, and I think what you said too with the detachment piece is so interesting because I really felt the same way where when I was drinking and I really wasn't acting in alignment with my integrity or what like was personally and intuitively the best choice for me and I knew it deep down. It's so much easier to try to control things externally when you're not, you know, conducting yourself and I guess you could say controlling yourself in the way that like you want to, but I mean, controlling sounds a little harsh, but when you're not really conducting yourself in the way you want to, it's easy to kind
Yes.
of attach to external things. Whereas I think when you're keeping promises you make to yourself and you start seeing this evidence of, wow, when I really walk in alignment with my integrity, the best possible outcome unfolds organically, and I don't have to worry about things outside of just myself so much. And I realize that all I can really control is myself. And in doing what I can to the best of my capability in mind, body, and spirit within, the rest unfolds. Whereas when I wasn't acting in alignment with myself, I was clinging on to external things like what people thought of me or how can I achieve this or this next thing because you're just going about it all backwards. And it is so relieving when you realize, like, all I got to do is just keep my side of the street clean, take care of my physical, mental, and emotional health. And I don't have to be attached to any outcome because I'm setting myself up for the best ones that I could get.
That is so great. I love what you just said, keeping my side of the street clean. And it is so important because when we don't have that substance in our bodies, because we think that when we drink, the next day it's gone. And it's not. It's still in our bodies for a number of days. It still affects our cells. Our body is still not really over it. And that's why we want it again, because there's this withdrawal that's happening throughout the
Mm,
week. And, when we are in line with ourselves and we're only focused on, being that person we want to be, doing things out of love, not fear. I think alcohol brings fear into people's brains too, because
mm,
we're a little bit altered. And so those negative thoughts kind of run rampant inside our
yeah,
heads. And like you said, when we just are detached and we can just conduct ourselves in a certain way, and I just love that, conducting ourselves in the way that we want to. There's no shame, there's no guilt,
there's so
there's
much
less
freedom.
worry. Yes, freedom and peace. Yeah.
Yeah, peace. And I noticed too is just, when I was not conducting myself in alignment with my integrity or making choices for the person I truly wanted to be, I was more critical of other people. I was more judgmental of other people that were like happy and healthy. I was like looking more at and considering more what people thought of me. I was more concerned with things outside myself because I wasn't taking accountability for myself and it was much easier to just deflect and look around instead of go inward and be like, yeah, that shit doesn't matter. Why you're doing that is because you're not taking accountability for what you know you need to, and that's just another distraction.
Oh, you hit it. I second that because I really believe that when we are yes, when we're not taking care of ourselves and doing things the way that we think we should or saying the things that we should say or things are slipping out of our mouths or whatever, we do deflect. It's so much easier to say, well, they did this or Like you said, I do the comparisonitis thing too, where I get online and I'm so critical of other people but also critical of myself instead of just saying, we're all in this together. We're really not separate. We are all one, and we can't feel that. We can't feel that oneness. We can't feel that connection when we have a substance in our system that's altering who we are. Because I just did a podcast with a really amazing man, Edward Miller, and he wrote a book about this, about one of the most important relationships is our relationship to self. And if
Mhm.
we're not even having a good relationship to ourselves, how
Mhm.
in the world can we be in the world
Yeah,
and be doing all the good things that we want other people to do if we don't have a relationship to self and our ego is just running rampant,
right.
all the time?
Yeah, I think that's so true in the way that we, treat other people, talk about other people. It just comes down to it being a reflection about how we feel in our own inner world, how happy we are with ourselves, how compassionate we are with ourselves, how fulfilled we feel in our own lives. And just in my own experience, I really just haven't met someone who's genuinely happy and genuinely fulfilled that's just spending their time like tearing people down. And so I think it really, is just a testament to where you're at when
Yes.
the way that you treat and talk to other people.
Exactly. And I think that's part of that is when you're so comfortable with yourself, there's no like you only have love to give because there's no lacking, there's no hole, there's no space that has to be filled by
Yeah.
gossiping or having power over people by putting
Mhm.
them down.
Or like wound that you're trying to avoid, or kind of like you said, there's a
Yes.
hole that needs to be filled. I think a lot of times, like we talked about deflecting from our own pain. And yeah, it's sad that it's like most easily done through kind of judging someone else. It's human
Yes.
nature, but it's hard because you feel it too. The healthier and more vibrant you become, it is triggering to people who aren't kind of moving in that direction, and you can feel it. And it's a little daunting sometimes when you grow into yourself and you're empowered and you're standing in your light and you know that it's inspiring people and it's helping people, but it's also like you can feel that it attracts some negative energy too. And I think it's good to protect your progress in that way.
Ooh, that's really good. Protect your progress. And I
Yeah.
think that's very challenging because w- our we're creatures of habit and we like that structure routine, that familiar, even if it's negative. And I find myself recently, even with this situation I was talking about in the last couple weeks in our office, I found myself getting pulled in, and luckily, I'm around people who are really amazing people who are like, "Whoa, we need to pull back on this. We need to, find a more positive way." So surrounding yourself with people who, even if we fall in, it's really important during your sober journey to find people that are going to be at that level with you because yourself changes. You are definitely on a higher level, and I'm not saying this is not like people are better than each other. People are all amazing. There's no better or worse just because you're drinking or not drinking, but there is a vibration that's different, and you're kind of at a different space, and so you're really sensitive to what's going on around
Negativity.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, the negativity.
Yeah, and I think too and I can speak from just personal experience, like I generally felt like when I was drinking that I would be more susceptible to toxic behavior myself, more susceptible to toxic situations and relationships, more susceptible to complaining and gossip and drama and like because again, it's just like an easy outlet to distract yourself. Whereas like when I'm sober, it's like I'm like, what's the solution here? Like,
Yeah.
let's make this constructive. And it's like not like toxic positivity. I still have my moments where I have challenging emotions or whatnot. I just don't feel like I want to like consume myself with them. I feel like I'm coming from a space of gratitude much more often and self-compassion. I don't have to beat myself up for things that I'm doing. I told myself I wouldn't do. And developing self-compassion within allows me to have it more for other people. Sometimes people still piss me off, but and I
Yes,
think
we're human. We're still human.
yeah, exactly. It is like a superpower, but you are still human. And so it's like you can tell that it brings you to a higher, like elevated emotional space where you're able to kind of like see the bigger picture a little more, where I kind of got drugged down into the doldrums of lower frequency behavior when I was drinking or hungover. And
Yes, and I'll give you a great example of that that is really clear to me now, that is embarrassing, but I'm gonna share it because I think it's so important for women to really understand this. If you're in a relationship and you're having struggles, alcohol, first of all, is exacerbating that on many levels.
Mhm.
But on one level for me was I did feel very nitpicky. I felt very naggy and nitpicky because I was having my own situation. So I, of course, noticed everything that everybody else was doing, the kids, my husband. And it's interesting because I have gone through some evolutions in work anyway, not just with the alcohol, just to become more just enlightened and on that higher level. But I would hang on to being right like freaking like it was my life depended on it. I would hang on
Yeah.
being, this is right. And I would justify things that I
Oh
said. And I'd
yeah,
be like,
notepad,
but
whip
he
out the
did this, this,
notes.
and this. So this is why I shouldn't feel bad. I shouldn't apologize. So now that I've worked on this, yeah, like scorekeeping,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was like,
totally, totally relate.
where's the ref? Because I'm winning. And I
Yeah,
was
same.
so bad. And now it's interesting because when I'm comfortable and I know myself more and I'm feeling like I can just be me, I apologize so quickly if I say something disrespectful. It doesn't bother me to be the one to say I'm sorry. And it doesn't bother me to say, I realize that sounded really disrespectful and I'm really sorry. And we can get through things so quickly. Like of course, my husband is so laid back. He's chill. He's like surfer dude. He's like, oh, I didn't even notice. But it's important for me to apologize for me. And I do that often just because I want to make sure that that's always out there with him in the universe. So God knows what I'm doing. I get it now. And I also have to let go of, okay, hey, he drives a little erratically, but he doesn't want to get in a car crash. So I'm not going to say anything. I'm not
Is
going to
the
give
driving
directions.
like the cause of every divorce ever? Me and my husband
I
fight about this
swear
like
I
all
hear
the
that.
time. Our last fight was about driving.
Yes, and I even was really cool when a situation happened. He got kicked off my insurance because of his tickets, and
Mm.
they mixed us up, and my license almost got suspended because of him, because
Did he
they
have to
mixed
go
our
to
drivers.
the
Yes.
driver school?
He has to go to
So
driver
did
school all the
John.
time, and
Sorry,
so
John.
I used to
So
yes.
did John's been twice. And then he like tries to tell me how to drive. I'm like, my comeback is always, honey, I have not been in back-to-back accidents and I have not had to attend driver school twice. I got this. I drive all the time without you here, believe it or not. But then when I micromanage him in the driver's seat, he's like, he does
Yes.
not handle it well, Kim.
Well, I get that. I get that. I think so many women listening to this are going to get that. But what I did find for our relationship, and I found with all the changes that I was making, alcohol really kickstarting this, I found that I could let go. And I just started
Mm.
playing on my phone in the car. I started, the ticket thing happened. He got kicked off the insurance. I was like, well, okay, honey, you got to go get insurance. And, I didn't nag him about getting it done on time. I just was like, "Hey, he's his person. I know what I'm doing. I'm good. He's gotta go to traffic school. I don't have to sit through it. Why would I be upset about that?" But I would find ways to get upset when I was still drinking and had that kind of level of,
Angst.
superiority and
And like
angst.
inner
Yes.
angst, just like
Yes. Like,
anxiety and
why
like
is that
weird
my
energy.
problem? Yeah,
Yeah.
why is that I made everything, and that's the detachment part that I love. I made everything my problem. And it's other people's business. I don't have to fix it.
Yeah, I know. I think it's so interesting. That's definitely an area I'm working on is like, because I'm the same thing where I used to be a big scorekeeper and like, this person did this, and this, and I know I'm right. And even now, my mom, she always says, like, would you rather be right or happy? And it's like, you know what? I've just come to the point where even in times where I still think I'm right, I'm like, well, I know I'm right. Why do I need them to know I'm right? To be right. I
Exactly,
know, whatever.
exactly.
I'm like, I don't need to like convince them. And then the other piece of it is like being okay with being misunderstood is just
That's
like
a big one.
when you feel like you're very confident in who you are and you feel at peace with who you are, which for me, I don't know if you felt the same way too, but drinking just gave me so much imposter syndrome and self-doubt, and it really had me questioning myself a lot. And without that there and just like really being able to trust myself and the choices I'm making with full clarity and connection to intuitive guidance, then I just feel a little more comfortable with people misunderstanding me. Whereas when I was drinking, like, oh God, what are they saying about all my behavior? I'm so embarrassed of. But it's like, well, I'm not embarrassed of myself anymore. I love who I am. So if it doesn't resonate with you or you want to judge me or misunderstand like my message, then I know what it is.
That is really powerful because what is the basic need for most of us? To belong and feel safe. And when you can feel that, that's so powerful that you feel that way
Mhm.
because that is our basic need. I think, even with eating, drinking, all of it is that belonging and feeling safe.
Mhm. And it's really hard to accept. I think we put ourselves in an interesting predicament when we're not really accepting ourselves and then we try to fit into other places. I think it sets us up to self-abandon a lot because we're putting the cart before the horse. Like we're not developing our own self-acceptance. So then we kind of want validation from anyone and we just like feel more desperate in our seeking of acceptance externally. But when you accept yourself first, I think that it's just such a better dynamic because you're not just scrambling for acceptance from anyone. You're more discerning about where you get validation, where whose opinion matters, who you seek acceptance from. It's like if you accept yourself, kind of like a woman who's happy on her own. It's like you're not just going to be getting into a relationship with anyone. You're going to be like, no, I'm happy here. So I'm only going to join forces with other energies that like genuinely align and uplift me further than just looking for
Yes.
external validation first.
And that makes me think of boundaries. I
Mm,
don't think I had good boundaries when I was drinking through a lot of those years. I think my boundaries got very blurred, whether it was, dating and, letting things happen that shouldn't have happened or letting someone treat me a certain way is what I really mean by that, and letting it go on for a long time. I think that was part of finding that authentic self is, it doesn't have to be ugly, but in my brain, breaking it off with someone or walking away, one, being alone, two, having to have that conversation and come up with a way to say that when in actuality, it's a fit or it's not a fit. And, if any of you are going through that dating, I went through it again when I was in my 40s. And it was kind of even harder because I
mhm,
was just starting to feel more like myself, but I was still drinking at that time. So it was weird. It was odd to be out and meeting people drinking in my 40s when it just I should by then I feel like, "Oh, I should have, have myself together and know what I want." But I didn't, and it's because I really didn't spend, enough effort on finding that out. Because, again, during that time too, just to throw in a couple things, obviously the single mom thing, but also then perimenopause starts kicking in. So,
mhm.
that did not
Yeah.
make the drinking any easier.
Yeah. Lots of
Mm.
hormonal shifts as well. And
Mhm.
also hormonal shifts that drinking is just worsening and exacerbating.
Absolutely.
But yeah, what you said too is so poignant for a lot of people probably who are trying to date or meet people. I think a big fear is like, oh, how am I going to date without drinking? And it's like, well, what are you going to attract if you're like drinking to attract somebody? And just that idea that maybe before just trying to fit in is taking the alcohol away and asking yourself, like, what are my non-negotiables in a relationship? What am I looking for? What do I want this person to be like? And even the idea of self-exploration and just, in general, getting to know yourself a little better and your preferences. So it's not just like living life on autopilot, whatever comes your way, take it. It's like, no, you get to decide too. And like you said, it's either a match or it's not. And I think so many times in dating, women just want to be chosen and then they make it work. And it's like, yeah,
Yes.
that's kind of um, setting yourself up for a lot of turmoil if you're just kind of, please pick me, pick me. It doesn't matter who you are. I'll make it work. It's like,
It'll make it work, and I always tell my daughters, I have a 23 and 24-year-old daughter and stepdaughter, and I always tell them, "You don't have to make that person Mr. Right. Mr. Right comes along, you don't turn him," and they don't and it's not that there's anything wrong with men, by the way, because women are the same, when I say this, but men don't change, and they show you who they are pretty early on.
mm,
And if it's not vibing, there's nothing bad or awful unless there's something, terrible going on. Obviously, abuse or anything that we do not want to put up with. But what I think is we don't, we talk about these red flags and they're real. And if you're drinking, you're not catching the red flags when you're out to dinner with them and they're on their second or third cocktail and they're
yeah.
saying something that's just like a little icky, but you just keep going with it.
Yeah, you just keep overlooking the red
Yeah, like,
flags,
"Oh,
like,
it's okay."
hello. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. Like you kind of are trying to make I was just saying this to a client recently where she was going through a dating situation and just the guy was not on the same level of commitment as her, kind of very nonchalant about, yeah, if you find someone better type of thing. And we talked about it a little and it was like when you spend so much time choosing yourself, working on personal development, putting all of this effort into becoming the version of yourself you want to be, don't you want like the partner to choose you just as much as you're choosing yourself instead of like, I guess I'll date you and she was totally on the same page too, like, yeah, F that. I have
I
invested
love
all
it.
this time and energy into myself, but it's so empowering to make that shift. Like, and I've noticed that with alcohol-free living and just being sober in general and being present and not really relying on anything outside of myself for happiness and just getting really comfortable in my own skin is like the same thing with, friendships and other things outside of romantic relationships is just like, why would I tolerate that when I've taken all this time to build my confidence, to build my health and wellness, to balance my emotional and mental and physical and spiritual health. Like you just raise the bar in your life and you realize like, oh wow, I was putting up with a lot of things that were really selling myself short.
Yes, and it's amazing how when we put up with negativity or toxic behavior, it's amazing when you start to have conversations with people in sober living where you're trying to constantly turn that conversation to be positive and you're trying to help them people actually who are not on that same level they don't it almost pisses them off
Oh yeah.
because they want to be in that space. It's comfortable, it's familiar, it's empowering, if you're talking about somebody and it feels so good to try
And
to
it's a
change it.
dopamine hit
It
for
is
them
an
to like,
addiction.
yeah.
Yes, to get that little gossip in or to be the first one to tell you something they heard or, put somebody down and I get it because I'm not saying I've never done that, trust
Oh yeah,
me.
me too.
I still fall into it sometimes, and I'm
Oh
like, "Oh,
yeah.
yeah." I mean, you would think I was on Housewives or Vanderpump Rules, like,
I get it from
let's
reality. I was just gonna say, I just get it from reality TV, and then I'm a nice person in my
Yes,
life.
yes, and I'm like, "Wow, am I just trying to make myself relevant here?"
Yeah,
It's just funny to me that when you do try to be a certain way, naturally people do kinda drop off because you have to be okay with that. You know, I,
yeah.
It's almost like when you get married, sometimes you kind of lose some friends because we're just in different
Or
circles, we're
have
doing
kids.
different things or have kids. Oh my gosh, that's the biggest one. And but it's the same with drinking. So when we talk about the evolution, it's gonna feel sad sometimes, and it's gonna feel like you are maybe being a little abandoned sometimes, but please know, as you're going through this, you're gonna find so much better, and you're gonna be so comfortable with yourself. There's gonna be a certain point, like, I'm at the point now if people don't wanna be around me, I'm like, "It's okay, it's one less thing I have to do," Because I
Yeah.
wanna be home at night. I don't like to go out at night anymore anyway, so
Yeah, me neither. Ever. I'm like,
ever,
"Mm,
I
no,
know.
no, no, no." I'm like, "I get in bed at 7, honey." Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I agree. I think that's also true and such a good way to kind of generalize and just make this experience universal. I think a lot of people can feel and take it really personally when people don't receive them well, but it is absolutely not personal. I love this feel good quote where he says it's not personal, it's vibrational. And when you
So good.
yeah, when you choose to focus on changing your lifestyle in whatever way you are choosing to in order to optimize your life, your frequency is automatically going to follow. And you just have different energy when you start respecting yourself and making new and different choices, whether good or bad, your frequency will change. And therefore, like, so is the dynamics of your relationships as a byproduct, and things may not resonate. Your essence may just be triggering now that you don't want to like self-sabotage or um ingest something that was altering you, and that's okay. I definitely took it really personally in the beginning when I was like, wow, it's really weird that people wouldn't be supportive when I clearly had a problem with drinking. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I wasn't one of those people where people were like, "Oh yeah, you should just keep drinking. You're fine." Like people are like, "Yeah, that's really good. You take a break." But then when it became like a full-blown lifestyle change and I built my whole business around it, it was easy to support me initially when I was like, "Ooh, 4 months, no alcohol." But when I was like, I'm building a whole business around this, I'm going to be talking about it all the time, and I'm probably never going to drink again. It was like a little more serious, and I think that's when a lot of my relationships shifted, or some of them, but, and I took it really personally, and it was hard for me in the beginning, but then, yeah, through time and just and obviously new relationships come into your life, but you just recognize like, "Oh, that really isn't personal." Like, people grow apart, and that's okay.
And that's okay. That's how we are in life. And I am embarrassed that I felt a certain way back in gosh, it was probably like 10 years ago. But I had a friend and I'm going to shout her out. Her name's Eva. And Eva was sober and she was a yoga teacher. She was beautiful. And I remember being out with her one night with other people and she's like, "This just isn't fun because I'm not drinking." And I was like, "Well, how can just, not have fun, we're all," and I understood what she was saying now. I wish I had had more compassion and empathy for her back in the day because she wouldn't come out sometimes because it was overwhelming when everyone was just, loud and things were getting louder and louder and it was overstimulating, I'm sure. And, she was very aware of herself, very in tune with herself. Eva really did herself so well. And now I look back, I actually, when I first became sober, um, when I was in it long enough to know that it was gonna be for good, I actually sent her some messages on Instagram because she moved away to Costa Rica. So anybody listening to this who knows me, you know who I'm talking about. Beautiful person. And I just thanked her. I said, "I have so much gratitude for you for being that example for me
Mhm.
and to also realize what you were going through during those times when
Yeah.
every single person around you is like fighting your energy." And
Yeah, it's
so it was
weird. It
yeah,
makes
it's
you feel
weird.
like you're like a villain to so many people, and it's like it's really sad because you can feel people's like hair raise up, like the dogs, you know? You
Yes.
can feel it energetically when you're around certain people who just like I still hang out with some friends and we don't really talk about what I do or anything like that, but I can even feel when it even gets close to it, like their level of discomfort, and it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like it's just like uncomfortable. It feels like you like hate it about me. That's what I feel like sometimes. And I'm like,
Mhm.
it's really sad to feel like people just hate your energy because you're like m- kind of rise something is rising up for them or whatnot, but
Oh,
it's
you're the
really hard to
mirror. You're
navigate that.
absolutely the reflection in the mirror of some of the things that they wish they were working on. They just don't sometimes people just don't know how, and they don't even know that that's the reflection.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying everybody's looking at you, like, saying, "Oh,
No.
I wish I could quit drinking." But I
Yeah.
do think when we're uncomfortable with someone who's really comfortable, there's something in us that's we're reflecting that feeling, and it does feel so harsh. And
Yeah.
I struggle you know what? I don't struggle with my close friends. My close friends are extremely supportive. My husband's amazingly supportive, and of course, he has a permanent designated driver. And but he doesn't drink that much. So he never has. Like I said with the blind date, he's never a big drinker. But I think when you have friends who are just not they're not as close, they don't know you as well. We also have this thing where we struggle again with wanting the best for other people. And I think that that's another thing that you talk about kind of that almost feeling like that hate, like they
Like,
just
there's,
hate
like, an
it.
you kind of
Yes.
feel an animosity towards you, and it's
Yes.
just like, "Dude, I'm literally just being me, I'm not passing judgment on you, otherwise I wouldn't even be friends with you," and I feel like that's such a hard thing to navigate, like, relationships that say they wanna be friends with you, but you can feel their disdain energetically for your life. And it's
Yes.
like, I don't know how to navigate that sometimes, and I find myself just, like, being really distant because I don't know how to engage with people that, like, say one thing, but
Yes.
energetically, I feel something totally different, and it's exacerbated by, like, 0 support online or never asking you about your passion and your life and what they clearly watch you doing all the time, and so
Yes.
it's really hard, and I think a lot of people probably struggle with that even in female relationships. I think it's like the sister wound, like where women are kind of competitive with each other and you like grow out of that feeling when you get really comfortable in your own skin, but you can feel it with other women and it's like, ugh, like I want to be friends with you, just like cut this shit out?
Yes, and I think that's really hard, but I think you're so smart because sometimes we do have to distance and until we can find that place, that ground, because if they're not ready to come to a certain level, it's really challenging. And I do think that's really interesting with women. And it's so interesting because I want to share with your listeners something really cool. You and I kind of became friends when Clubhouse was around,
Mhm.
and you had started this journey of using this is your business now. And the cool thing about Clubhouse, if nobody ever heard of that, is you didn't really see people unless you looked them up on Instagram. You just heard voices, and we were in rooms and we would have conversations. And you were so inspiring. And I think when you go on this journey and you feel like I think we're blessed that we have those experiences because we do have an opportunity to support other women so much easier than women who don't do what we do and have to have some of these connections through whether it was Clubhouse or Instagram or podcasting or doing lives together. Um, People who don't have that, I feel sad for them in a way because we have this natural way of getting together and talking and finding our common ground. But you were very inspiring to me. That's where I was really going with that
Mhm.
too, is that I just wanted to keep in touch with you. And I could feel the energy that you had. You were ahead of me. And I could feel that that's what I wanted. And I think when we have those really tough relationships, like you said, I'm not sure, like, do I stay in this? Do I go? Do I distance? There's when people are behind, we can do the best that we can to help. Like, I want to help anybody who wants to even think about talking about, you know, eating better, alcohol, whatever. And when you're ready, you're ready. But if you're just not ready and you're not ready to have these connections, you're not ready to be a little deeper and you're not really ready to be, connected in certain ways, sometimes we have to back off and let go. And
Mhm.
that's part of you being you. Like, hey, that's okay. You're not ready.
Right.
You're not ready to be
And
in this
even
yet.
in these even in some of the relationships that I'm referring to for myself and clients, I'm I mean, maybe more so I spoke about it more in the beginning, but now when I spend time with people from my past who I know have no interest in health or wellness, like I'm not bringing up sobriety, I'm not bringing up anything I'm doing. I say nothing about it. Because in the past when I was in friendships where people literally didn't ask and I felt like it was really weird that they weren't because it was such a transformation in my own life. I mean, I was not only transforming my personal life, but I was building my whole business around it and like shifting my entire career trajectory. And it felt like my entire world was different. So for people to like not say anything felt weird. And I found myself like trying to like share to be like, this is what I'm doing. I'm really excited about it. And then I would have
Yes.
a vulnerability hangover afterwards, like, okay, those people clearly had no interest in anything I'm doing, which like is weird on their part if they're my friend, but like it left me feeling like this needy, clingy person that like needs external validation. When in reality, like the root cause is like it's weird that you're spending time and investing energy in people that give diddly shit squats about like asking you about your life. Like that's what it really is. But it's like, so I learned
Yes.
from that, like if you are going to hang out with people that you know have no investment or interest in what you're doing, it has to be very sparingly and then like hold your passions like close to your heart. But even in those sparing instances, I'm still like, this just feels so weird. Like,
Yes.
I mean, I want to talk about things that are important to the both of us, but like,
Yes, and that makes it hard to invest the time. It
yeah.
makes it hard when people ask me to go have coffee or they ask me to go have lunch or something, that's my time. And I could be helping clients, I could be working on my business, I could be working out, investing in myself. And if I know I'm going to just be getting, and I don't mind, I want people to talk about themselves. I love that. I want to hear everything that's going on in your life. But when there's not that back and
Reciprocity.
forth. Yeah, it's hard sometimes, but sometimes I think people don't ask because they are uncomfortable with those parts of it. I have people who constantly are uncomfortable because they'll say, I really should get in touch with you. And that's all they say instead of just having a conversation with me. They already are throwing out there like I'm judging them or something, and it's not that. I'm not judging at all. I just wanna have a conversation. But they're
Hmm.
immediately like, "Oh, you're into, helping people eat better and
Yeah.
exercise and, menopause," and, we're just people. This just
Yeah.
is our job. Like, when I used to teach math, nobody ever said, because it's so personal, like, if I used to teach math, although people would be like, "Oh, I was so bad at math in high school." I thought that was hilarious. Everybody had to tell me whether they were good or bad at math. But it's not personal. So
Yeah.
it doesn't hit home so hard.
I
And
know.
yeah, the drinking thing too, I was gonna say, when you're with people, I don't bring up even my alcohol situation sometimes with new people. We'll be out and I'll just have maybe like a sparkling water, and it's interesting to see, like, they wanna ask me a question like, "Are you just not drinking tonight? Are you not drinking forever?" But, it's fascinating because I went out, I might have told you this story when we talked last time, but what was so interesting was I went out with some people who came into town, and they hadn't seen me since I had stopped drinking. And as a health coach, I know it's really probably odd for people too. I ordered a Diet Coke, just have something different. I've been drinking water all day, every day. I was like, oh, everybody's having a drink. I'll have a Diet Coke. Do you know I had a worse reaction with everyone saying, you're a health coach and you're drinking Diet Coke? But if I had ordered a white wine, nobody would have said anything.
You're like, if I drink poison of this kind, that's a problem. If I drink poison of this kind, you're like, pick your poison, honey. Okay? That's what I'm doing.
Yes, it was
And this
so
one I can still
funny.
drive home after, so
Exactly. And I can
whatever.
drive you home too.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely an interesting world. It's funny how you said that about the math teacher thing. And And I've thought of that too because I did that post recently. You commented on
Mm.
it, but it was like when you tell people you're a health and wellness coach and they kind of roll their eyes, and then when you add on for sober curious people who want to eliminate alcohol and people just get like immediately triggered. And I was saying like I was thinking during that, like I think I wrote like I'm just gonna start saying I'm a plumber from now on because like if your toilet's not broke, then you're not triggered by a plumber, like if it ain't broke, then like you can't be
Exactly.
triggered, but it's because it's so personal. And I think because everyone deep down knows like alcohol is not healthy, and B, I think a lot of people also could in general could be healthier, and so it's a little bit like pointed. But yeah, it's like it's just a job. I just do this. If you're not looking for help, that's okay. I am not here to like transform you to sobriety. What this that said, I like this question, like what do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of choosing an alcohol-free lifestyle or being sober?
I think the most misunderstood is people think you had a problem that was like far beyond what you really had. It makes it hard for people who and I have alcoholics in my family who have been in and out of rehab. They've it's so hard. It's such a disease. I had a problem, but my problem was more of a habitual stress reliever. And people really think at first that that's why you quit drinking, which I thought by now, I think now I'm going to change that. That's when I first started. But as we're going along, I'm seeing so much more sober information, sober curiosity online. But you really were like one of the first people I've ever heard of that works with people um, but I think that's one of the most misunderstood things. The second most misunderstood for me personally is that I'm not fun anymore. And
Yeah.
I am. I am. I can go out and have a great time. I have a better
Before
time.
7.
Yes. Before 7.
For
Don't
breakfast.
don't invite me out. Yes, don't invite coffee is good. Don't invite me out at 9 o'clock to go to a concert because I will watch something on TV instead. I'm fighting to get through Bridgerton right now,
Oh,
without wanting to go to sleep. So, I think that those are the 2, that your personality is gonna change, you're not fun, and your personality is changing in a bad way, or that you had a problem. Now, everybody who quits alcohol probably has some level of a problem, but I think that people, want to know if I was all the way at the other end. And no. But I
yeah.
am scared for people because the research is coming out now and the research is pretty definitive that no level is good for us.
Yeah, I think it's linked to 7 types of cancer, and they're reformulating the guidelines is more like 2 drinks a week instead of a day and stuff. And then there's the whole question of like research and who pays for it and lobbying and
Exactly.
corporations spending money on political agendas. So that's a whole another can of worms. But um yeah, I really do think the what you noted about it being a severe problem is again rooted in somebody like reflecting on their own behavior, because if they can say like, "Oh, your problem was really bad though."
Yeah.
Not like mine. But if you say something like, "Oh, it wasn't that bad. I just, didn't like having anxiety after I drank. I didn't like not feeling fulfilling my full potential. I was wondering what I was capable of." I think deep down, a lot of people have those questions who drink any amount. And so it's just a bit more, it's a little bit less of an other person problem, and it's a little more triggering the less of a problem that you really had. So it opens the door for more people to take a peek at their drinking. And if you're not really in like a stage to do that, then it's a little more hair on the back of the neck rising.
Exactly, exactly, and I just wish we knew all this when we were younger, but it's like I said, I see it so much more. It's funny to me. It's almost kind of trendy, a little
Yeah.
bit when you see it out there. Um, but it's not trendy enough for people to actually be able to follow through completely. So
Yeah.
that's why we need people like you. We need amazing coaches who can help really dig a little bit deeper, because
Mhm.
the reasons we drink are sometimes so connected to things that we didn't even realize that we've been dealing with forever. We just cope in all different ways. It manifests itself in different coping mechanisms. And when you've got someone like you who can walk them through that walk instead of just cold turkey trying to stop drinking without understanding the layers of it,
Yeah.
that's really challenging. That's really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, and but conversely, so fulfilling when you are able to peel back the layers and realize, like, wow, I'm pretty fucking cool without
Yes.
alcohol. Like, there's so much to me, and there's so much more that I can get out of life. It's just really a whole different lens that you get to view life through in such an empowered way. And so I think it's such a worthwhile payoff for all the
Yes.
hard work. And I wanted to ask too, with all the messaging around alcohol and a lot of like the kind of conditioning we have and normalized programming around it, what ones do you think are the most dangerous or detrimental to our healing, growth, health overall?
Yeah, I think what's really challenging is I'm having another huge different viewpoint on this, because my kids are 20, 23, 24, 25.
Mm,
And I'm watching them, and 3 of them went to college, and one of them doesn't drink, doesn't work well for her, and it just happens to work out that way. My 24-year-old stepdaughter. My 2 kids that went to Florida State, I know that they were immersed in that culture with alcohol. And then of course my stepson, it's all, what we see on Instagram, TikTok, the glamorization of it. But I've noticed that some of the top shows, because I'm so much more sensitive, it's amazing when you're not drinking how much you realize there is out there. And I mentioned Bridgerton before, Housewives, Vanderpump,
mm,
Yellowstone. Everybody's got a glass in their hand. And it's interesting because I thought about that, and I thought about the glass for me when I was watching some of these shows, was not just like everybody having a drink, calming down, relaxing together, the quote unquote connection. It was a shield. It was something I could have in my hand. And it was something that it's like, holding your baby in front of you, like when you're out, like, hey, this is my shield. Like I can have my baby in my arms. And, sometimes you just don't want to talk, or you just want to sit down and relax, and you can kind of focus on your child. It's like a shield to have that thing in your hand. And I think that it's really damaging that it's glamorized so much. And they're all sponsored. When you see those on the shows, a lot of these shows are getting money because of the liquor. The other thing is when you go out, liquor sales. Think about the fact that they don't make money off of food in a lot of restaurants and bars. They make money off of the liquor. So the first thing they ask you is, what can I get you to drink? And I went out to lunch the other day, July 5th, and I noticed that everybody in town, the tourists, they were day drinking at lunch. And again, we have this message that it's July. Well, let's go back to July 4th. We have a message that every holiday like July 4th, it's barbecue and drinking. We have messages for St. Patrick's Day. It's just drinking. Cinco de Mayo. We have so much messaging, and I think it's really damaging because we don't have these, non-alcoholic gatherings and get-togethers that we celebrate. And so I don't know what to do about that other than to educate people that you get to be you. You don't have to fall into it's just to me like diet culture. We have fallen into diet culture and dieting and macros and calories, and whether you believe or not believe everything they're pushing at you, there's some stuff I think is really real and scientific. The same way with alcohol, a lot of stuff is being pushed on you, even the information about how much is good for you or not. but you're not cool if you're not drinking, you know? So I that's a long answer to I don't know what the answer is to it, but those are the things that I find damaging. And every pretty girl having a glass of wine in her hand on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
That makes you pretty. It's like buying makeup. It's like
Or
marketing.
sexy, and
It's
it's
sexy,
like
yeah.
nothing could be further from the truth. I think I've never felt like sexier or more confident than finally getting to a place where I can socialize and not give a shit about drinking. And I think back and I'm just comfortable in my own skin, talking to whoever I want, making eye contact, talking about engaging things, asking questions, having intelligent conversations that are actually interesting. I think that's sexy, but I don't think it's sexy when you have to drink to feel comfortable in your own skin. I don't think it's sexy when you get sloppy, which is like that happened a lot for me. There were many times that I drank that it was like not cute at all. And it's like we just laugh it off and even injuring yourself when you're wasted. It's like people being like laughing about hurting
Yes.
themselves when they drink. And it's like that's like not funny. It's scary. You could have if you are at a point where you're like injuring yourself drunk, like you can actually kill someone else. You could hurt
Yes.
kill yourself. It's like the fact that we laugh about it. And I've shared my story about like my family getting hit by a drunk driver when I was a baby. And I'm like, I just can't imagine, it's like any one of my blackouts, I could have like crashed my car into somebody or myself, like killed myself. And we're just like, oh, like I broke my wrist drunk. It's like, yeah, that's the least that you could have done. You could have walked in front of
Yeah.
a car. You could have done any number of things that could have altered the trajectory of your life forever if you're blacking out. I think normalizing blacking out is so strange.
It is, and people do. I think that the thing that we, have just got to do as our own little sober curious group, our sober group is, really highlight those wonderful things where you feel that's the freedom. Like, we know we're not gonna do things like that. And I remember those days where I would see a picture of myself, and, of course, I thought I looked great going out. I thought I looked pretty.
You're like,
You know,
oh,
people are talking to me, and then I see a picture and my eyes are all glassed over, my face is red. I was probably, like, trying to get to the restroom, trying to look cute, and I was, a little wobbly. And it's funny, I'm not picking on anyone, by the way, who's maybe still in this situation, but now when I'm sitting in a restaurant and I see that, I don't judge. I don't think, "Oh my gosh, can you believe that person's doing that?" I look at that girl and I say, "I was you, and I
hmm
wish you knew what I knew right now."
I
That
know.
is what I feel.
I don't feel judgment at all. I feel like if anything, I judge my old self and I'm like, oh my God, that was you a million times. And you literally thought you were having like a good conversation, or you literally thought you were attractive and it doesn't
It
take much for you to start noticing, especially when you're on the sober side of things. It's like, I'm not just talking about getting like totally wasted either. Like, even after a couple of drinks, the luster of confidence that you think you're exuding a couple drinks in really isn't that impressive when you're on the sober side of it because you're like it's so easy to feel confident when you start like lubricating yourself up with alcohol. Like it didn't take much. I feel like I'm pretty outgoing and as a baseline, I think like I've had confidence, but and I thought I was. And it's just like it's just so much more refreshing to be able to do all of that as your natural self. And it's
Yes,
really cool to develop that. And
but now I
it
have to
feels really
sneak
powerful.
out. I have to get out at 7:30. I have to, like, sneak out
Yeah.
and say I'm going to the bathroom.
You're like, Irish goodbye, see you later. No one will notice. It's like Homer Simpson in the bush.
Yes.
I know. I'm the same way. I'm like, all right. And you reach like a saturation level where like, all right, I can't converse anymore. It's funny too, I don't know if you notice it, but it's totally different if I'm around like a group of people drinking or like having a conversation like this, or with my girlfriends who don't drink and we're having like a slumber party and we could talk all night about like witches and astrology and health and wellness and the state of the world and conspiracy theory that, I don't know. But then when
Yes.
I'm around people who are drinking heavily and I'm just trying to make small talk to like socialize, so exhausting, and I feel so drained afterwards because it does feel like more like, okay, I'm really trying to like engage here, whereas it's obviously more organic with other people.
Yes, and I have a big milestone coming up in December.
Mhm.
We have a yearly Christmas party with Mike's company, and 2 years ago, we didn't go to the last one, but the year before that was actually we never used to drink very much, and I went to him for 10 years
Mhm.
and knew the same people over and over again. That was the most that I had had to drink, ironically, that December before I quit drinking,
And
and
it
that
was
was that
like a
Christmas
few
party.
weeks later.
Yes, and that party, I had so much like what did I say? What I do? People were way worse than me, but I still think about that. So it'll be really interesting. This will be the first time seeing those same people in 2 years, and I am completely sober. So it's gonna be fascinating.
Yeah, I wonder, you'll have to keep me posted on how it goes and if anyone. I always think it's funny when drunk people are like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you." I'm like, "Hey, thanks."
Yes.
That's nice of you. But yeah, you'll have to let me know how it goes. And so, oh, I feel like we could go on and on, but
I know.
I wanted to wrap things up, but I have a couple last questions. And one is, how do you plan to continue your growth and evolution without alcohol? Like, what areas do you hope to develop next?
Oh, I love that. So one of the things I mentioned before is just my relationship. My kids are out of the house except for one who is really looking at finding his own place and just really working on my relationship with Mike in the skills that we talked about before, having that detachment, but real love for just him being who he is. And I'm extending that to my friends also. As someone who I've always been over the years into obviously working out, health and wellness. I don't say always, but when I really started getting into it, it has evolved over the years. And now I'm really looking at just longevity and health and looking at how I can feel the best that I can without thinking about um, skinny all the time. And because I think when I was drinking, I still like I just hung on to a lot of different things that were just so not really about me as a person.
Mhm.
And when I look at health in from the inside out, that's really important to me. And also just working on this is the hardest part, but the biggest part that comes from my journey and extending it from quitting alcohol is one would think at 57 years old that I would be pretty secure and pretty authentic in myself, but it goes with everything you and I always talk about, what we talked about today. That is a constant journey for me to just be really comfortable in my own skin and to say what I want to say kindly, directly, be around the people that I really want to be around that not just, love me for being me. I don't mean it like that, where I just want people to adore me. I don't mean that. I want people who really connect with me and we can have the conversations like you were talking about. We can have fun conversations. We can have interesting, deep level conversations. And I'm also finding that I'm really loving alone time too,
Mhm.
finding that space and that peace where I enjoy just more quiet and more still. So those are the things that I'm working on right now, and that will change. I keep evolving, and I'm never going to be perfect, and I'm always on a journey, and
Mhm.
that's where I am today.
I love that. Yeah,
Mhm.
the connection to alone time is really amazing and liberating. And I notice the more that I just come to a place of peace and stillness with myself and connect more to my spirituality and just connecting more to like my spirit guides and just asking for divine guidance. And it's like I crave it more and more and more, and realizing like we really do have access to a higher intelligence that's always there for us. And It does. My husband's funny. He's like, I feel like you have all of these like outlets where you can just like go do your tarot cards and go do your meditation and like go do your garden. But it really is like the more inner peace you find, like the more you kind of crave those things that nurture and nourish it and kind of continue to propel it forward. And for me, I've really been seeing like the development of a spiritual connection and finding so much reassurance in that.
I love that. I think that's so important. And whether it's universe, God, whatever
Mhm.
you feel, having that higher power, you feel so connected. It's like we love personal connection with people, but when you're connected to that and you're connected to yourself, then like you said, it's just so empowering. You
You
want
don't,
more and more.
yeah. And you don't feel like alone. And there's like so much assurance and faith that things are going to pan out for you and that you're on the right path and that you do have guidance along the way. And that's
Yes.
been so just supportive to me recently and just knowing it's there because there'll be times where I like won't meditate for a while and I start to be like, hey, I can feel that like missing element in my life and tapping back into it is always so nice and doing it on a
Yes.
regular basis. I'm like, I feel like I could have my head in the clouds every day. I don't need any people.
Yes. And it's funny, I get like that. My husband travels every once in a while for different things. And right now I really enjoy that because I do get that time to do those things and do a lot of walks. And I am just getting back into meditation. It's a struggle for me without guidance, but I love it. And then the walking alone. And I have started taking the dog out without. I used to always take my headphones because I love podcasts. I love yours. I love everybody's. I would just want to listen to I want to soak in information. But I've been learning with the dog, like just take the dog and just go and watch what he's doing. He's just going along. He's just checking it all out.
Mm,
And that's at least once a day. I'm trying to do that without any outside stimulation because,
mm,
again, just like the alcohol and everything we've talked about in food, the outside stimulation can change who you are and what you see. And, you talk about like the spiritual guidance, I can be so grateful for what I see. And I come back a completely different person, whether, instead of me just being on my phone the whole time or trying to return text messages or a frazzled mess when I get back.
yeah,
Mm.
being preoccupied constantly and being a mom has definitely been a good reminder of that. I feel like Arthur is my lesson in mindful presence because he can tell. I was just talking about this in the last podcast I just recorded before you. Is like he can certainly tell when I'm preoccupied, and I feel like he almost demands my attention and like, Mom, hello, get your ass back here to the present
Yes.
moment and pay attention to
Yes.
me. And then as soon as I do, like his energy shifts, and I'm like, okay, thank you for that. Whereas I feel like so often in our culture and just like the lifestyles we create and how chock full they are of stress and this idea of like what the expectations are around what we should all be doing, go back to work, put your kids off in daycare. And like we just have this idea that a slow pace of living is not accessible to us. And so I find and see a lot of people like fighting that urge to slow down or like be present in those moments. And I feel like that's when you get like frustrated with your kids because you're like, you're being annoying and like I have all these things to do instead of being like, wait, like that's not the kind of life I want to create. One where I feel like I'm constantly stressed out, preoccupied, on the go, and need to drink wine at the end of the day. Like I want to be able
Yes.
to slow down when my child is like asking for my attention and be present with them. And yeah, so just continuing that journey of peace.
That's so amazing. I love that for you, and I love that for Arthur too.
Yeah, it's such a cool little experience. But okay, what one piece of advice would you give to your old drinking self if you could give her one piece?
That is so good. I think I would say to my old drinking self, you are enough and you do not need the alcohol You are enough in every aspect of your life, in relationships, in friendships, as a mom, because that was really hard. There were times that and being a stepmom, as a wife, there were a lot of times where I think that I would tell myself that you are enough without it. You don't need it. In fact, you'll be even better without it. Because I think part of giving up a familiar routine and a habit and something that soothes us is we have to face the truth.
Mhm.
And the truth is, you are enough. And anyone out there who's even contemplating getting sober, you are enough just the way you are. But until you believe it, it's going to be really hard to let go. And so finding someone who can, like Katie, who can help you understand that everything is as it's meant to be, but the alcohol is messing it up.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. You are enough. Well, that was beautiful. I agree. And I love talking with you. You have the best energy and just presence. And anyone would be lucky to work with you on mindful, intuitive eating, health and wellness. And so tell people where they can find you and anything specifically you're offering you want to share your podcast, all the things.
Awesome. Thank you. I am easiest to reach me on Instagram at Kim Hines Help. I do have a podcast, the Emotional Eats Podcast, and Hines is spelled Hynes. I also am going to be starting up a program in September. It still has to be named, but it's all around women in midlife who are still struggling with emotional eating and stress eating, and
Mm.
knowing that that's sabotaging them mentally, physically, messing with their soul, the whole thing. So I'm excited to start that in September. And that's about it. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And it's very easy. KimHines.com is my website.
Yay, yeah, I love that. There's probably so much overlap too, talking to women about emotional eating and then drinking. Do you feel like
Absolutely.
now that you've been sharing more about your own alcohol elimination that people have been gravitating to talking more about that, or do you notice it come up more?
Yes, it comes up a lot, especially when we talk about why they're eating, because they really are the same. It's that dopamine hit, it's that escape from reality. And you have said this before, and I think it's so valuable, whether it's food or alcohol, when we create a day that we don't have to escape from, that's when we're really truly free. And if you wanted something, food's a little different because if you want something, you want to enjoy it once
Hmm.
in a while, that to me is a little bit easier to work with. But yeah, there's such an overlap because and it's also in limiting beliefs, what you believe about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so true. It's just like focusing on that root cause and like what is ultimately, whether it's drinking or eating or shopping or whatever, binge watching TV. I'm guilty of that. Real Housewives, what? But I but it's like what this is a symptom of something I'm trying to distract myself from. And obviously some are much more like harmless than others.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like exploring what we feel the need to self-medicate away in our lives.
Yes.
So thank you for coming on. And thank you everyone for listening. If this resonated, please like, share, and subscribe. And make sure to go follow Kim on Instagram, and kimhines.com is her website. Thank you all for tuning in.